Ahoy! Yesterday I made a video talking about the SMITE mid-season changes, and right as that came out, Hi-Rez also released some announcement for changes to the changes. And in those changes, Hi-Rez actually addresses a lot of my concerns as well. Before we talk about that in detail, let's talk about money. Today's video is sponsored by...
Yeah, capitalism!
That's right, it's sponsored by Adventure Capitalist. Because you guys know how much I just love capitalism. Adventure Capitalist has been around for 6 years now. Only 3 more centuries to go and it will have existed as long as actual capitalism. And could there be a more capitalist way to celebrate that than with free rewards? Wait, that is actually the opposite of capitalism. Anyways, they're giving away a bunch of free stuff. All rewards will be available for anyone who downloads the game during the next 6 weeks. And the in-game rewards that you can get are running back-to-back limited time events, a party hat giveaway, and a store sale, as well as changing in-app store bundle offers. Now that sounds more like capitalism to me. Different from actual capitalism, in Adventure Capitalist you cannot lose. So there's no risk of ending up with crushing student loan debt here. Therefore, it's a fantastic game to play on a second screen, for example, while you're sitting in queue or while you're dead in SMITE. Since you can leave and come back at any point and actually get rewards for going away for a bit, you can just return to the game whenever you have a boring moment. If you play during the event, there will also be weekly rewards giving you 6 free time warps for Time Warp Wednesday. Also, there will soon be a documentary about the game came to be and how it almost didn't happen. You'll find the link for that down below and in-game if you want to check it out. So if you're ready to make profits without having to sell your soul to do so, click the download link below. Now, onward to the changes. The first change is actually PTS unrelated, but I wanted to quickly point it out for you guys as well because some of you may not be aware. Benevolence is currently disabled in SMITE, and that's on the live client. Apparently there's some sort of bug with it and they're looking to re-enable it as soon as possible. This may ironically shake up the support meta going into the next patch as well, depending on how long this bug will last. But the other changes here are more intended. The first one is to Staff of Myrddin. Hi-Rez writes, the new Staff of Myrddin has definitely resulted in some quick ability casting. We are going to reduce some of its raw effectiveness to bring it into a better spot for life. A small power reduction combined with a quicker decaying and a lower amount of uncapped CDR should make this item feel closer in balance to old Staff of Myrddin, allowing you to get 1 or 2 spells back quickly, not multiple rotations. So the power is reduced from 95 to 85. The uncapped CDR it provides at the start is reduced from 80 to 70. Keep in mind that this gradually decreases. And the time to decay is decreased from 7 seconds to 4 seconds. Keep in mind that in this time frame the cooldown reduction doesn't reduce to 0%, but it gradually reduces from now 70 to 40%. This was what it looked like previously with Habwaz 1 as an example for the cooldown that the ability would have, which ultimately meant that with Habwaz 1 specifically we're at a point where the cooldown of the ability was shorter than the animation of the whole thing. Whereas if you look at the numbers now, it's a lot more reasonable and it scales up a lot quicker. So after the first second, the cooldown reduction is already down to 60% and after 2 seconds it's already down to 50%. Much more balanced than it was before. Maybe even weaker than previous Staff of Myrddin, where you could use abilities twice very quickly after each other, even though one of them had reduced damage. I gotta say, with the now very significant power reduction from what was once 110 power, I personally prefer the old version. It wasn't necessarily better on all mages, of course, it was a little bit more selective, but I didn't think that was inherently a bad thing. After all, other items like that exist too. Soul Gem works better on guards that have shorter cooldowns or more abilities, and that's also okay, so I'm not sure why Staff of Myrddin has to be the outlier here. I think it's unfortunate, and I think that Staff of Myrddin might not be very popular after all these nerfs to it, but at the same time, this new version of the passive was super frustrating to play against on PTS, so really with this new version it's going to be very hard to balance it in any way. The next one is Sundering Spear. Now, Sundering Spear was a super popular item on PTS and I thought that it was definitely a bit too strong, and now it gets multiple nerfs as well. On the base form, the cooldown is increased from 90 to 110 seconds, which is what current Sunder on the live client is as well, but keep in mind this still has 2 charges. The stacking damage increase is reduced from 7% to 5%. Weirdly enough, the patch notes said 10% beforehand, so I'm not quite sure where it was originally on PTS, if that was just a wrong description or a bug, or if they forgot that here and had a in-between version or something, but either way, apparently it's down to 5% now. Keep in mind that this aspect is still better than the current unupgraded version of Sundering Spear, which doesn't have any damage amplification at all. The Sundering Spear upgrade gets a less significant nerf, only increasing the cooldown from 90 to 110 seconds. As I said before, this is especially relevant for supports with Relic Dagger, because that can reduce both of the cooldowns of both charges, so it has a bit more of an impact there. That also means that upgraded Sundering Spear can still deal 15% of the target's current health with each bolt, and it can still increase the damage taken by 10% per bolt for up to 20%. So there's still a lot of damage behind the upgrade here. I think they're primarily targeting the base version to make it a little less appealing as an early relic on supports, especially on solos, where you can use it for super high aggression in those early fights, and then you have to invest into the upgrade first to get more effectiveness out of that, and with that having a higher cooldown, I think there's reason to think that it will be picked up a little bit less now. It is still a strong relic though, being able to deal a lot of true damage to targets very easily, especially if you're playing a tank, so I think it will retain some of its value in that. Overall, after what we saw in PTS, I think those changes are reasonable, and if they need more nerfs, those can always be done later. Now these two issues were not that surprising to me. I had brought them up to Hi-Rez and they had already said that those will likely be looked at. The next one, however, was a little bit more of a surprise, and that is Transcendence. Transcendence and Stonecutting Sword both stood out in PTS as items that were rushed to provide a huge spike in power that are difficult to counter. We adjusted a few of these items already, but wanted to add these to the list. Our goal is to bring down their strength, to ensure there is strong enough item diversity at launch, but not overdo it before we see what they can do. If these items need further adjustments, up or down, we will do that once players get their hands on shaping the item meta. So for Transcendence, this means a revert, which makes me very happy. I'm always glad to see Hi-Rez taking changes back when they don't work out, or changes of the meta affect them in different ways. In this case, it's the cost being increased from 2,450 to 2,600 again. I think that is very reasonable, not only looking at hunters but also at junglers. I think this item would have been very impressive otherwise, and I think something as simple as a price change can already make a significant difference here, because especially for junglers this means that the power spike comes online later and then the item still needs some farm. And I think it will still be picked up by certain junglers, but it's not going to be that one option that stands out above all else. The other one is a little bit more surprising to me, and that's Stonecutting Sword. Here the cost is decreased from 2,350 to 2,250, but in return the protection debuff is decreased from 10 to 7 per stack, so a total of 21 protection reduction, and the protection buff that you get yourself is decreased from 10 to 7 per stack as well, so also a maximum of 21. The power spike from Stonecutting Sword is definitely nice, because 30 flat protection reduction at the start of the game often means that you can basically get the enemy protections down to near zero, and that obviously makes a very significant difference. This change prevents that, but ironically the cheaper price makes the item a very accessible early game choice. So I am kind of curious how this will go. I think those guys that are not opting into more clear focus things could get away with a Stonecutting Rush and maybe utilize that well in combination with Eye of the Jungle. And I kind of wonder if this change may end up having the opposing effect from what it was meant to do. But we'll see about that. I can't say too much on that until we see things in game and see what other items are being picked. War Flag and War Banner just get a little bit of a description update that is only really relevant if you were planning to run multiple of them at the same time. Has also included a quick explanation for how the movement speed increase will actually work, and it's quite simple. You can see it here. It is simply plus 3% per level starting from level 2 until you reach 18% movement speed at level 7, and that is what you keep until level 20. There was a crazy amount of confusion about that one. And then Gilgamesh also gets another nerf. Hi-Rez thinks his numbers overall still look a little bit too good, and in his case the initial slow of his ultimate, Winds of Shamash, is decreased from 20 to 30% to now 20% at all ranks, no matter what level it's on. And additionally, the root at the end of the ultimate no longer cripples. This is, I think, quite a significant difference. If you are ever in it at the end of the ultimate, you'll still take a fair bit of damage, but at least you'll have a little bit more of a way to get out of it. At this point, we're close to a better nerf Gilgamesh meme. Another thing that I quickly want to mention here is Bracer of Radiance, the new relic. I forgot to talk about that in my last video, and I actually used it on PTS, and it sounds relatively strong with a 10% power increase or 10% movement increase. I have to say, the item does not feel overwhelming at all, mainly because the radius is super small. So that's probably why you're not seeing any nerfs or any changes to it here either, because very few people have picked it up so far, or have used it effectively because it's just in such a small radius. It also feels weird that this effect is combined with a ward, but you kinda only use it as one or the other, because usually you're not gonna need a ward in the same place where a damage amplification is useful for you. I tried using it in lane for clear, didn't feel like it made a massive difference because it only really increases power anyways and not just raw damage. But yeah, we'll see how that goes in the long run, but that's why it's not being changed and that's why I didn't talk about more. There's really not much to say yet. Those are all the changes. If there's anything else coming up, I will of course let you know. So click like and subscribe if you haven't, so you get updated for that as well. Outside of that, I quickly want to thank Adventure Capitalist again for sponsoring this video. I hope to see you for the next one soon. Duke Sloth, out.